welcome to Get Excited! It's the News, a show where I, someone who just this morning apologized to the doorway when I ran into it, explains the news. Sort of feels like maybe we've all messed up here, you know? But anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about the news of the week, starting with the deep dive. The fight for a $15 minimum wage has hit a snag, and I think we need to understand what's happened. So let's get the opinion part out of the way. Why? Because if I call it out now, I think you'll believe me when I tell you that I'm not trying to convince you that $15 an hour is the right thing to do. Sure, I personally believe that people should be able to earn a livable wage, pay their bills, get out of debt, and build wealth, regardless of what their job is. Feels like that's not that radical of a thought, but as we're learning, not everyone agrees. Now, that is an opinion, but there's a pretty good chance that's your opinion too, because 67% of Americans support a $15 minimum wage. The minimum wage was first enacted in 1938 at a rate of 25 cents an hour. That's $4.64 in today's money. So think about that for a second, and then remember that our federal minimum wage is $7.25. That's almost the same? And that doesn't include people who can also make tips. For those employees, the federal minimum wage is $2.13. That's less. Look at me, a regular math genius. Oh, but Kim, sometimes people make hundreds of dollars a night in tips. Probably, and also, dang, good for them. But remember, in order to qualify as a tipped employee, all you have to make is $30 in tips a month. The minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009. And for what it's worth, $7.25 in 2009 is worth $8.81 today. Interestingly, in like a bummer of a way, the minimum wage, when adjusted for inflation, is lower than it has been in the past. Here's a very helpful graph showing that adjusting for inflation, the 1968 minimum wage was the highest we've ever had and would be $12.27 in 2021 money. So now people are like, hey, things cost more money now. And half of Congress is saying, yeah, what of it? And so people are like, well, we need to pay for that stuff. And half of Congress is like, okay, so get a job. And they're like, yeah, we did. Why aren't more networks asking me to come on their shows and explain this? I'm clearly nailing it. Anyway, so a minimum wage hike has become an increasingly popular stand, and it's one that many Democrats ran on. Now, they're not looking to snap their fingers and get a $15 minimum wage. According to Bernie Sanders, this would be an incremental increase that brings us to $15 in 2025. Now, as you know, Democrats held the House, won the White House, and now hold the majority in the Senate. And it wasn't the easiest win. Now a lot of people are asking for a return on their investment. They want to see that $15 wage increase. So here's where we're at with it. The Democrats still have the filibuster to contend with. If you're not sure about the filibuster, check out the January 24th episode for a great explanation and even better pirate joke. To pass anything, they need 60 votes of support because of the filibuster. In order to circumvent that, because I don't know if you heard, but things are very tense between the Democrats and Republicans, they tried to put the wage increase into something called the budget reconciliation, which they're using to pass the latest COVID relief package. A budget reconciliation only needs a majority vote instead of a filibuster-proof majority. Now, I obviously know what a budget reconciliation is, and you obviously know what a budget reconciliation is, but I decided to look up anyway, so we're all on the same page. But to be clear, we all knew before today what this thing was, so good for us. Reconciliation is a process that was created under the Congressional Budget Act of 1974 to allow lawmakers to change policy on spending or taxes to keep the nation's budget in line. That's a pretty basic thing, but it's only allowed to be used once per fiscal year. Also, it can only be used to change or reconcile laws related to taxes or spending. Now, because this seems like an opportunity to be a little sneaky, there's also the Byrd Rule. Named after Senator Byrd, this would take out a provision from the reconciled budget if it's deemed extraneous to the actual budget itself. This is a very different thing from my personal Byrd Rule, which is, of course, stay away from him. I don't trust him. So senators couldn't add, say, a gun control measure into the budget. Or, stop me if you saw this coming. Oh, wait, no, you can't because this is my show. Oh, wait, I guess you kind of can because you could just turn it off. The $15 federal minimum wage. Once a senator objects to a specific measure being put into the budget reconciliation, it falls to the Senate parliamentarian to decide its fate. So what's a Senate parliamentarian? Well, and I mean this in the best possible way, they are essentially the super nerds of the Senate. So they've studied the history of each chamber, including information about precedents and rules, and are on hand to answer questions from the presiding officer about wording of motions and can offer advice about interpreting standing rules about legislation. Our current Senate parliamentarian is Elizabeth McDonough, who is the first woman to hold that position since it was created in 1935. So there we go. This has been this episode's deep dive, also known as I didn't get it either, so I looked it up, and then I figured, well, might as well talk about it. How about some headlines? The House has voted to pass the Equality Act. This monumental piece of civil rights legislation will ensure protections and prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in employment, education, and housing, among other areas. A long time ago, I watched a show, or maybe I read a short story where a person took over somebody's body and everything they saw with their eyes was actually also sent back to a video feed for someone else to see and use that information against the person whose body they had taken over. Eventually, it drove them literally insane, and they checked themselves into a mental institution. Anyway, Facebook is going to start making glasses now, and it may or may not include facial recognition. Seriously, please, somebody, go read Dave Edgar's The Circle. I'll send you my copy. The new mail trucks are adorable. People are making fun of it big time. Look at this little thing. It's cute. Big old windows. The current mail trucks, which have no AC, a million blind spots, and would spontaneously catch fire, will slowly be replaced by these little guys who, in addition to having airbags, automatic braking, and 360 cameras, will either run on petrol or electricity. Tuesday, March 2nd is Read Across America Day, so this week's Be of Service is easy, and you get something out of it too. Head over to indiebound.org and pick yourself up a new book. Why IndieBound? Because it'll connect you to a local independent bookstore near you. Look, I get it. There's a certain online store that ships things out at a concerningly fast rate. And yes, we all feel terrible using them, but also, yes, our brains are broken, and now it actually sends little drops of dopamine into your noggin when you see that brown box on your doorstep. I get it. I'm broken too. But just this once, remember that local businesses need your support. Because once this pandemic is over, we get to go have brunch again. You're walking down the street to your cars because you could never find parking in the lot. And on the way, you stop into a little bookstore and grab a new book. God, you're so excited. Bring it home, put it on the coffee table, maybe clean the apartment a little. Then you sit down, finally ready to relax. You grab that book, and then remember that a friend of yours told you that you have to watch some show on Netflix. So you do, and you don't touch that book for another 6 months. Don't you want that feeling again? Okay, me too. So please, go buy a book from IndieBound, or if you know your local bookshop already, even better. There used to be a bookstore in the Studio City Aroma Cafe. I think of it often. And finally, because you put up with me talking about budget reconciliation, here's a little something to make us all feel better. That's it. That's the news. As always, go to KimMoffitt.com for a transcript of the show and links to everything I talked about here. And hey, if you're like, the show's fine, but I wish I could hear it while also playing Candy Crush, I've got you covered, my friend. I'm a podcast now. That's right, podcasts are free to put up, and I'm really testing that limit. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Have a great week, friends.